Good afternoon. The thing I want to talk to you about this afternoon is whoever thought that low season was a good idea. And some apologies, Jed, for querying this. I hope you'll like the discussion that follows and that you won't feel too badly about the title that I chose. It seems to me that the problem with low season is it suggests low prices. So, for example, what we see is low season and off season often used interchangeably as a time or year when a particular activity, very often a sport, is not practiced or engaged in, a time of year when business is slack. And then, of course, there's the off-peak notion of cheap travel on the rail and so on. The advantage of that, of course, is that it is often less crowded, but of course, the first off-peak journey of the day on the rail is often very crowded. So it's not an absolute guarantee that you'll have less hassle. Low season implies less crowded, less frantic, less hassled, and clearly those are all good benefits to the traveller. It's also important, I think, to remember that it can mean a deeper and more local experience. And those two photographs on the side there are taken from Travel Weekly. It's very much entered the mainstream now of travel marketing, that people prefer to travel in the low season when they can perhaps have a better experience. This is one of the things I referred to in the bits of text that I sent to Jed. For me, these are the most extraordinary opportunities to see our landscape transformed really by winter. And of course, that's more meaningful if you know what that landscape is like in summer. And I'll come back to that shortly. So the off season, we have end of season sales, off-peak fares are cheaper. But of course, when you come to look at the way it's used in marketing, it is slightly different. So take this example from Rome, where the off-season crowds are smaller, the off-season accommodation is cheaper, the holiday attractions are open all year in Rome. Rome's residents look apparently ultra stylish in the cold. In Rome, the winter is beautiful, and you're more likely to see the Pope. Now, what strikes me about that is that these are experiential reasons, except for the cheaper accommodation. But we know that a cheaper price probably is a motivator for people to take an extra coat with them when they travel. The photograph there of the Roman building of the sun behind it shows just how beautiful Rome can look in bright sunshine and with few people about. Then you get articles written about the 13 of the best off-season trips in the newspapers and magazines. Clearly, there is a market here. And part of the reason for that market is the awful nightmare of over-tourism and what that means for people. People really just don't like over-tourism. Whatever form that takes, it's about there being too many people, not being able to see what you're looking at, and a sense that you're just there with a lot of other people who don't really belong there. They're tourists passing through. And there's more and more demand, I think, from travellers particularly to have an opportunity for a genuine engagement with the local community. We see counter-seasonal marketing in this kind of form, the notion of off-peak luxury being about more than just a room. So it's about finding that opportunity to enjoy the place in a special way. And of course, the experience of the snowman and the snow dog, which is used in marketing by some organizations as well. And then we have a thing which has come out of Cornwall. It's also quite common on the west coast of Ireland, and you find it in North America too. The notion of storm chasing, actually looking for those winter storms and watching them from inside a cozy hotel. This advert is for the Headland Hotel in Cornwall. This one is about Whitby and why you should visit Whitby in the winter with the winter light. And clearly Whitby does look good in that photograph. And you also have a sense that there's not a lot of people there. You're going to have it more to yourself or more to be shared with the locals than you might otherwise have it. Then there's storm watching. Now this is from Cornwall. I've chosen a series from there. This is from the Queen's Hotel in Penzance. The luxury of being able to watch a storm like that without risking getting wet or indeed being flooded out and pushed into the sea. Dramatic photographs for those opportunities to see them. But here comes the big opportunity, which I think is so often missed. Whenever I stay in a hotel or a B&B, I wonder why it is that they only have photographs of the walls, on the walls, of what the destination is looking like when I'm there. Surely it would make sense to use your own premises, which after all are freely available to you, to do the cross-marketing. Why is it that there aren't in the bedroom? Why are there not images of what that view looks like in the winter? So for example, look at this. This is again from the same hotel. It's the Headlands Hotel in Cornwall. This is actually the view from room 59. Now, surely that photograph should be on the wall of that room. I don't know if it is, but that's the kind of thing which, when you see it in the summer, might well encourage you to think about booking a winter break back in the same room, for the chance that you might again see that kind of storm. Or this from the sun lounge of the same hotel. But imagine coming back in winter for a meal or to stay and have breakfast with that kind of storm raging outside. These are the opportunities we should be selling. Now, here's another example of using the different seasons for cross-marketing. So this is Tofino. This is obviously the summer view of Tofino. Here is the way it looks in the winter. And again, I don't know, I've never been to Tofino. I don't know whether these kinds of photographs are used in cross-marketing, but they for sure ought to be in terms of encouraging people to return to experience the place in the off-season. Skiing is a bit of a more problematic area, I think, and areas used for skiing. So you can look at 10 ski resorts for summer, and clearly there are some very beautiful, I mean, is that for real or is that a painting? I understand it is for real. It's beautiful, untouched, undamaged. But of course, some winter activities damage destinations in the summer. So this is ski scarring, a major issue for areas which are wanting to market themselves both in summer and in winter. Some of the infrastructure of winter activity and some of the infrastructure of summer activity scar the landscape, so that actually making the off-season becomes an important period for the restoration of the landscape when it's given a chance with lower numbers of visitors to recover. And we see that with footpaths in the Peak District as well, for example. But the scarring is a problem. Then there are just wonderful local festivals that happen off city. So I talked in the text I gave to Jed, I talked about the pleasure of a roasted chestnut in a woodland sheltered by yew tree. Here's an example from the east of people celebrating chestnut roasting in a winter festival. These are unique experiences, really only available off-season when there are fewer tourists. For a long time, I've argued, I go to Kerala quite a lot, I've done a lot of work there over the years, but for a long time I've argued that they've undersold the monsoon. They are now beginning to sell it far better, so we get marketing material like this, 8 reasons why the monsoon is the best time to visit Kerala, and off we go. Local festivals, you can see a photograph of the Onam festivities there. It's the best time for Ayurvedic treatment. It's the best time for overflowing waterfalls. Just look at the beauty of that other image. The lush green hills, the relaxing backwaters, the reverberating beaches. It's only at the end that they talk about the more prosaic reasons, the fewer tourists and the great discounts in that particular pitch. If you look at the benefits of visiting during the low season, in Iceland in this case, they start with you save money, there are fewer tourists, the prices are more competitive and lower costs, and the F roads are closed during the year, so you don't need to spend money on a 4x4. Those are all, as it were, rather prosaic reasons. They're important, but they are more prosaic. But look at the language on the other side of the slide. The island magically transformed into a winter wonderland, snow-covered landscapes, the northern lights, hike on a glacier, explore glacier caves, trek through an ice cave. The spectacular northern lights will illuminate your nights with glacier hikes and ice caves filling your days. So much more engaging set of reasons why you would choose to visit in the winter, in the off-season, the low season. So the question, have you experienced the monsoon? And this is Kerala. And look at the bits I put in red here. Nature glimmers with enchantment, painting the plains with bold beauty, infusing life into the plants and trees. The monsoon gods smile down upon the nation of Kerala with a multitude of offerings, from boat races to boat cruises, spice and coffee tours, treehouse accommodations, and so on. One merely has to wait for those in-between days of moderate rainfall to enjoy all of this and more. And then perhaps the most attractive bit for me, the pitter-patter season can only be described as artsy and romantic. And they talk about the fruit coming on the trees in the rain, the fact the trees sing in the rain. It's about the way we market it and challenge people to come and experience the monsoon. And this is a large-scale tour operator marketing mainly to domestic tourists in India. It's Thomas Cook marketing Kerala to Indian domestic tourists for visiting in the monsoon between June and September. And then, of course, there's the other kind of tourism. We're back in the UK now with fox hunting. And here what we have is clearly a local activity. It means something culturally in these villages. But on the other hand, it's obviously attracting people who come for the spectacle and to take their photographs. Some of those will be locals. Some of them will be day visitors. A few of them may be overnight visitors staying in local hostelries. But here, I think it all becomes a lot more problematic. I had a student who worked in the Yorkshire Dales at one point in tourism marketing, and she said that one of the challenges was that the marketeers in head office, as it were always cross that the farm stays, particularly the B&Bs on farms, weren't open more of the year and that they didn't work longer years. But the reality is, of course, that the low season, the off season, is also time off. It's time off for the community, generates these kinds of locals only campaigns, which you do see around. It's also a time when people want to have their own village life through the village Christmas festival and so on. But here's one which is actually wanting to attract more people. But the reality is, for people who run a farm stay accommodation in their own home as a B&B, they don't want to have people there all the year round. They're entitled to a low season, an off season, a season when they don't have guests sharing their dining room and their accommodation, some private time in the backstage area. Now, these two photographs are not related to the example I want to talk about, but there's some people in the Gambia who run a really excellent upmarket lodge, and they run that in the Gambia when the Gambia is popular. And then they go snowboarding because they're keen snowboarders and they have a snowboarding business. They run two businesses at different times of the year in two parts of the world, the one in Gambia, the other in Canada. Interesting way of running a life. For them, the low season doesn't exist, but it exists. They move simply between one destination and another. For them, it's a time for a change in the way they lead their life and the kind of business that they're running at a different time of year. But of course, the risk that a place is closed is a big problem. It's very difficult. If everywhere is closed around you and you're running an accommodation, it's very hard to open up and get the visitors because there's nothing for the visitors to do. And I think that raises what for me is the fundamental question of who decides whether there's a low season or not. Now, it may be that the business wants to have a low season. And it seems to me it's entirely the right of a business owner, particularly a family-owned business with few staff, to close. The French have been doing it for years. They have the annual closure while the family goes on holiday. That seems to me to be perfectly legitimate, and it's unreasonable to argue that people should stay open and work a 52-week year. On the other hand, people want to visit destinations. It's not enough just to have board and lodging. There need to be attractions and activities. And if all that board and lodging is in an area where everything's closed, it's really hard to make your business work. On the other hand, it seems to me to be unreasonable that a destination management organization would insist that people try to be open for a whole year. But one of the ways of dealing with that is choose to extend the season by agreeing collectively as businesses to create partnerships to enable packages to exist and to decide which weeks of the year you're going to extend the season into. So you don't necessarily open 24/7 for 365 days a year. Perhaps you decide that you're going to open for an additional couple of months, either in the autumn, in the winter, or in the spring, depending upon what makes sense for the particular place. But those decisions, in the main, need to be made collectively. Only a few places have enough attractions that they're able to operate year-round and to bring people together for a whole year-round experience. Clearly, if you're a country hotel operating in a beautiful landscape, people can come and stay and have their lodging and their food with you and walk in the landscape. But if you're in other areas, it may be impossible to operate unless other attractions are open as well. I'm sorry I'm not with you this afternoon for the Q&A, but if anybody wants to be in touch, then please do drop me an email or we can arrange to speak. Thank you for listening.